and decided to keep the things that I think we thought it worked fine. So this, on the left side of the image, this is the usual things that you usually, when you fly, see on board. So you have plastic everywhere. You're still missing the blanket and the headphones, and you really, and I'm pretty sure you feel the same, you have a lot of useless plastic on board an aircraft. Do you really need your blanket to be wrapped in plastic? Do you really need to have everything wrapped in plastic, and you're going to use it for, well, 10 seconds or maybe less? So this is what's used regularly, and this is what we used in our trial flight. So we've learned some things. That's a PLA lid. That's something that we're not going to use anymore starting the end of 2019. We used cardboard, we used compostable materials, we used bamboo for it to get reused. In the first trial flight that we did, all passengers stole the bamboo cutlery, so it worked. Huge success. Of course, we had some things that we need to go over and decide what's best. We didn't use plastic bottles. We used glass bottles. And of course, that's not good for the environment because it's heavier. It's, in terms of emissions, it's not a good solution. So we are working on alternatives to minimize that problem. But this is what we used and some of the products that we're going to use throughout the 2020. So for that, mentioning the plastic bottle, because we cannot use a glass bottle as in the old days, because people are flying more and more, it's needed. So what we can do is try to make aviation as sustainable as possible. So we are working with a university at the moment on an R&D project, and we are currently working on an alternative to a plastic bottle. So that's a bottle that looks exactly the same as the plastic bottle, but it's not plastic, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for human health. I cannot go into detail at the moment because it's an R&D project, and it's confidential, as you can imagine, but we will have, and I can tell you this, we will have more news next year, and hopefully you'll be able to taste water from it very soon. So the flights were viral, more than we intended to. So we had a lot of feedback from journalists, from passengers, from other airlines, trying to realize how we did it, logistically, what products did we choose, how we were able to make that happen. So at some point we decided, we were already discussing it with the European Commission, so we decided why not organize a conference and have all these airlines get together and discuss the problem of catering waste and single-use plastic. So that's what we did. We organized a Sustainable Cabin Forum in May last year, and we had a first as well with that. So it was the first time that the European Commission sat down with aviation, with the industry, to discuss single-use plastic and catering waste. And it was the first time that airlines got together in a non-competitive way. They were actively talking to each other, sharing ideas, sharing good practices, and learning. And they made a lot of commitments after this forum as well. So next steps, from our side, we will continue to try to make the world a little bit better, or at least try to create a single-use plastic-free planet. So I invite you to relax, get comfortable, and imagine that you are now landing in Brazil in a non-plastic flight, and think that, and really open your eyes and think that if this is possible, then change is possible, and it's only up to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From plastic-free flying to a washing machine that has a plastic filter that takes out the plastic. You will hear Mukhya Zupan, but first, again, a video in which it is explained.
into the oceans every week simply by doing your laundry. Every one of you. Because when we wash our clothes, especially if we wash synthetic fibers, millions of tiny microfibers are released into our world water supply that eventually ends up in the oceans. 35% of all microplastics in our ocean is actually microfibers. Is actually microfibers from your clothes. And scientists agree on that. It's 35%. 55% is tires. And it doesn't look like we're going to do something about that, because even if we go completely to electric cars, they'll still have tires. And the rest is urban dust, and a little bit is cosmetics. So 35%, think about it, that we can actually stop. The washing machine is not the source. Fashion is. But it's a very good choke point of where we can stop this insane pollution. I'm not going to talk about microfibers being an environmental pollutant and health hazard, because there have been speakers far more competent than I am talking about that today. And here's the little water bug, Daphnia, who already had some exposure today, public exposure. Here you can see she had red microfibers for lunch. You can see the red little thing. And this is how microfibers work their way up through our food chain and end up on our plates. My daughter, she says it very vividly, we eat each other's underwear. And it's true. Thank God it's washed. So, how did I end up in this? I'm a lawyer. And what does spirulina have to do with it? So, I was a lawyer with a corporate career, and I had an industrial client who had problems with authorities because of their wastewater. So they asked me to put together a team of experts to solve the matter. And this is how I met our chief engineer today in Planet Care, Hakim. At the same time, a friend of mine wanted to design a home-grown spirulina kit. She's a superfood junkie. And if you want to actually eat the spirulina you grow, you have to filter the water in which it grows. So she asked me if I could ask the same team to design a filter for her. And I did, and we did. So while all this was going on, there was an exhibition about marine literatouring in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, where I live. I took my kids, and I saw these microscopic images of microfibers, and to me, they looked so much like the spirulina under the microscope. So I thought to myself, maybe the same filter we designed for her for spirulina could actually work for washing machines. And it did. And this is how our first very primitive prototype of the filter was born. And this is how Planet Care was born. I have put my heart, soul, and all my savings into it. So our mission is to stop microfiber pollution with an efficient, practical, and affordable solution. It needed to be efficient because I wanted it to work. I wanted to go beyond conscience clearing. There are a lot of products out there that are great for awareness, I won't name them, but they don't actually do the job. We needed something that worked. And it needs to be affordable and practical because you want it widely used. And the only way it's going to be widely used is if it's affordable and practical. Our filters are independently tested to capture 90% of the fibers. We have been tested by the CNR in Naples, the Institute of Chemistry in Ljubljana, and most recently by the Swedish Environmental Agency. They have actually voted our filter as the best solution on the market. Today we have an external filter that's intended for domestic use, commercial filter that's intended for laundries and hospitality industry, and an industrial filter that's intended for large textile plants. We are the only solution out there that is completely circular. Because to me, it made no sense to capture 3 grams of microfibers and throw away 300 grams. That would be ridiculous. So we designed a return and reuse scheme for cartridges, which allows us to reuse, really reuse, 95% of the cartridge, and 5%, which is actually the filter medium with the fibers caught in there, we recycle for insulation panels. We are the first solution ever to be awarded the Ocean Clean Wash Quality label by the Plastic Soup Foundation. Plastic Soup Foundation has supported us and guided us from the start And I'm so grateful to them. Maria, Harm, and Laura, they're great. And whenever I would be down, and I did get down occasionally, I would remember Maria, her relentless energy, her will, her strong will to carry on. Somebody once said that if she would be a battery, she would fuel a city. You agree with me, probably the ones who know her. So I would get back up again with her help. The reason I would get down sometimes was that 2 years ago when I started this, and I was touring the world explaining about our solution and the problem, rarely somebody knew about microfibers, microplastics problem. Today that's more mainstream. But even the ones who knew what the problem was kept saying to me that nobody is going to buy the filter because it's not for them, it's for the planet. And people need solutions that are for them, that make their lives easier, not that are saving the planet. But I can tell you today, we have just started a sales campaign with our partner G-Star here in the Netherlands at the Plastic Soup Foundation, and I can tell you that there are actually people out there who are willing to pay for it, thanks God. I still know each and every one by name, so we haven't quite reached our sales targets. But we're getting there organically every day. We're growing, and I'm very optimistic. And, you tell your neighbor, the neighbor tells his neighbors and the relatives. So, it's moving. We're creating a community. The users are very happy. The first feedbacks are very positive. So I'm sure we're getting there. Also, we're quite successful with our commercial filter. We have a great partner in the States, the Green Earth Cleaning. They are actually a company who has over 2,000 affiliates for dry cleaners all over the world. And we are about to enter the beta testing phase with our commercial filter on 20 of their sites in California, starting November. And after that, hope to deploy them commercially through the US. Oh, and this is India. We have installed our first industrial filter at an otherwise already very sustainable textile plant. We installed it at the end, just before the water is used for irrigation. And you can see my colleague Miha, how happy he is to be in India. It's 55 degrees in there. He's looking very much forward to go again. So if any of you want to have a project in India, he's sitting there at the back. I will leave you with an advice of Professor Guy McPherson. I think it's suited. If you think the economy is more important than the environment, then try holding your breath while counting your money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next guest, we would love to invite him here, but he has a slight problem because he is in school doing an exam. So that's a good reason not to be here today. He is 18-year-old, he's from Ireland, and he is studying in the Netherlands. And in 2019, he won the Google Science Fair for a project in which he investigates a method of filtering microplastics out of the water. His name is Fionn Ferreira, and here he is on video.
Hello everybody, my name is Fionn Ferreira. I am from Ireland, I'm 18 years old, and I am the winner of the Google Global Science Fair 2018-19. I won with a project called an investigation into the removal of microplastics from water using ferfluids. This is a new method to remove microplastics from water using an interesting technology and an interesting, cool sciencey method, which I'll show you over the next quarter of an hour. I live pretty far down south in Ireland, and that means that I have some stunning scenery where I live. I go kayaking a lot, and I'm really inspired by just seeing that coastline the whole time. However, we have a problem there, and that is plastic pollution. What I set out doing was, in 2016, kayaking around, looking at our whole coastline and trying to analyze how many plastics were on the shore. I was counting them, categorizing them, and making geospatial maps where I could then look at just the impact the plastics were having on our environment. I was looking at big plastic particles mainly, but also microplastics, tiny plastic particles. And from this, I just identified how big this problem really was. So I thought, well, is there any method I could use or investigate that could remove microplastics from wastewater? So I did a bit of research, and it turned out that there was no method to remove microplastics from wastewater except for filtration. And we can't filter wastewater. It's not organic materials, and it's just a really slow process. So I was thinking about it, I did a lot of research, and from that, I guess, I thought, well, maybe I could try out a couple of things. I'm sure there's something that could remove these. So actually, I was thinking about this for a very long time, but later I actually was at our seashore and I saw a rock and it had oil spill residue on it. And stuck to this oil spill residue were plastic particles. From this, I asked myself, why is this happening? And I did a bit more research, and I found out that, well, plastic particles are what we call non-polar. And oil is non-polar too. And in chemistry, likes attract likes, which means that non-polar things attract non-polar things. So I thought, this is interesting. Maybe if I added vegetable oil to an expanse of water with plastics in it, well, maybe plastics would stick to this vegetable oil. So I tried it out and tried out different oils, and I found that light vegetable oils would actually work the best. So I thought, that's interesting, but that wouldn't be effective because we'd be adding oil to the environment. A bit of time passed, a bit more research, and I actually heard about ferrofluid from a high school science experiment. And ferrofluid is a magnetic liquid. It's tiny iron particles suspended in oil. And ferrofluids are made of basically rust powder mixed with vegetable oil. And so I thought, well, maybe I could make my own ferrofluids, and maybe like that, I would be able to, I guess, magnetize the oil-containing plastic mixture. So I did a couple of tests and I tried things out, and it looked like it worked pretty well. So I decided to make some microplastics just by sanding some plastic bottles and different things, and then I decided to analyze my method. I started out with a suspension of microplastics in water, where I added microplastics to water, making a suspension. I then added oil, vegetable oil, and magnetite powder, turning it all into a ferrofluid. I then mixed this together, binding the ferrofluid to the plastic particles. And finally, I could use a magnet to remove this from water. And the magnet would basically attract both the magnetite powder, but also the oil and plastic particles stuck to that too. And you can see it's pretty impressive. I love watching this, even though I've done this many thousand times. In fact, I think it should be included in those videos, those satisfying things to watch videos that you often see advertised on YouTube. So I had this method, but I didn't have a way to test it. So I got building. I got to work, and I decided to look at to see if I could build something to test how efficient this method was. Remember, I lived really, really remote, so there was no way for me to go to a lab. So if I wanted to use any equipment, I would have to build it. So that's exactly what I did. I set out to build something called a spectrometer. It sends light through the water, or a sample of water, and then analyzes it using a diffraction grating, which is basically a thing with lots of tiny slits, and a webcam behind it. I'm analyzing the spectrum of light, or the colors broken down from the light that I capture. And here we can see just a couple of prototypes. I made lots of prototypes, believe me, some of which exploded, some caught fire. My parents weren't very pleased with me doing this in my room, for obvious reasons probably. But here we can see my final spectrometer. It started out with a light source, which shone light through a sample of water into a webcam and diffraction grating. I could then analyze that light in a software called Spectrograph, and like that, use the Beer-Lambert law to analyze how efficient my method was after capturing a spectrum just like this. When I capture a spectrum, I can see a series of interesting lines. Those lines show the brightness of light at the different constituent colors of the spectrum of light. The Beer-Lambert law says that the concentration of something in the water is proportional to the absorption of light at a constant wavelength. So I could apply this directly, select the wavelength, and then analyze the concentration from that. And I got many results and tested my extractions before and after extraction. I then took averages and did this many, many times. Of course, though, I didn't fully trust my method or my spectrometer either. This was a piece of kit that cost me less than €15. Okay, it cost me several hundred hours of building, but less than €15. So I didn't believe it entirely. So I decided, well, I have to maybe use an auxiliary method as well. So that's what I did. I built a microscope too, as one does. And I built a microscope that takes an image of my water containing plastics before and after extraction. And even visually, we can see that there's a difference here. I could then analyze my pictures in Adobe Photoshop and analyze the number of pixels covered in plastic. I could do that before and after, get a percentage decrease in plastics. So I got a lot of results out of this. I did the 10 most commonly found microplastics in our environment, including high-density polyethylene, like milk bottles, epoxy, then everything to low-density polyethylene, and even things like washing machine fibers and microbeads as well. I found that washing machine fibers, which I actually got from my parents' washing machine, like I took apart the washing machine, it never worked correctly afterwards, it always left dirty smears on our washing. So my parents, again, were not very happy with me. Basically, these fibers were the easiest to remove from water, with an average extraction of 93% plus or minus 1.19% extraction. My hypothesis for all of these tests was 85% extraction, and this was indeed met. I have a hypothesis test at the 95% confidence interval to test this and to verify this. The lowest and most difficult to extract microplastics were polypropylene, and that's because they're a slightly denser plastic than the other. However, these still had an over 78% extraction rate, which is still extremely good, and I'm pleased with this. So I've shown that it works on a small scale, but now I'm working on making it bigger, actually getting it to a larger scale so it can be used. This, of course, requires a little bit of external help because I can't build everything in my room anymore, mainly because my room's probably too small for all of this. Particularly now that I'm at college, I'm actually studying chemistry in the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And you can actually see me in my room now. And I'm trying to build a prototype which could be used in wastewater treatment plants, a continuous flow system where water would flow through an area of oil and then plastics would be captured in this, and it's quite interesting. I'm also looking at a system that could be built into ships, so as they go across the Atlantic, they would actually be filtering microplastics inadvertently. And then, of course, I got my average extraction rate for everything, which was 87% plus or minus 1.1% extraction, which I'm really proud of because this is higher than the extraction rate of filtration as well. So finally here we can see organic material tests, and this is the latest stuff I've been doing. I've been adding mud to my samples and using UV light at the extraction before and after extraction, and you can see that even with organic material it's still a very efficient method with over a 97% extraction rate. I'm working on this as well as larger prototypes, as well as trying to tell others about this method, because I think that it's not only about my method. I want to get other people inspired to look at creative thinking and creative ways to solve problems, because of course this is only one problem. There are many more left to solve. So I'm passionate about speaking to others about my work and trying to inspire others too. Finally, if anybody has any questions, I would love to try and answer them. My contact details should be displayed on screen now. Please head over to my website, www.fionferreira.com, and I would really like to thank you for your attention.
Super smart guy. Okay, before I announce the last two speakers in this section that we have here, I would like to ask 4 people to go to backstage to get a microphone for the panel discussion. Sean, Ginon, Liz, Bonin and Cyril, please. Could you go that way? And then the last 2 speakers here are from the Plastic Soup Foundation, Laura Diaz-Sanchez and Mudhuri Prahabkar.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for making it this far. We hope you're not too tired. It's been a long day. We hope you've had a very productive day, and we heard really a lot of motivational speaks. speeches. And we would like to thank each and every one of the speakers who came here today to share their experience and their knowledge with all of us.
During this day, we got a very clear picture of the situation. And now we know that we need to urgently do something to start taking care of the next generation. Not only the next generation, as David pointed out, but all the generations, including ourselves. We got to know that we are completely exposed with plastic. It's absolutely all around us. Today we heard some very concerning talks, but we don't want to end on a sad note. Just before us, you heard about some inspired solutions, and we already know that we have something out there that we can use to start doing something.
As you all probably know, the Plastic Soup Foundation is one of the few organizations that is focused on stopping plastic pollution at the source. And that's what all our campaigns are focused on. And what we also do is we try to find solutions, especially tangible solutions, and we bring it to the general public. So what we try to do is to bring people's perspectives into those solutions, so then we translate their will to change into something they can have on the palm of their hands.
Being young people ourselves, we realize that the world that we live in today is highly digital. Nowadays, there is an app for absolutely everything. There is an app to find food, there's an app to order clothes online, there's an app to find love, and there's even an app which can tell you if it's dark outside. That exists. It's a real app. So what we're trying to do with this massive pool of apps is that we want to create a space where people can have something with which they can help the environment.
We're hearing all the time people talking about the devastating consequences of climate change, plastic pollution, forest burning. But what we want to do is to give people a tool where they can start making a difference right now.
So we already started in 2012 with our oldest and most successful app to date called Beat the Microbead. And with this campaign, what we're trying to do is not only raise awareness for microbeads, but all kinds of microplastic products, ingredients that are used in cosmetics and personal care products today. We wanted, with this campaign, to give consumers the knowledge and a tool with which they can make choice where they can actually go for microplastic-free products. And we were not actually very surprised to see that our campaign was highly and strongly speaking to women between the age of 20 and 45. What they did then, and they just went to the retailers and they told them that we don't want microbeads in our products. Retailers went to manufacturers and asked for change. And by the end of 2016, we had 448 brands that promised to remove microbeads from their entire range of products.
And not only what Madhuri just said, we also want to give consumers the option to buy microplastic-free products, completely free of plastic. So we certify brands, and we check all of their ingredients, and we check if there are plastic ingredients in all of the products, and then we give them what you see here, look for the zero. Right now, we have 70 brands under this certification. We're also really proud that 5 of our brands were recently featured in the 40 best sustainable beauty brands. Brands like Veleda or like Beauty Kitchen. Maybe you're familiar with Beauty Kitchen already because you might have seen it in the venue at the Plastic-Free Valhalla or at the toilets if you wash your hands. And if you didn't, please go wash your hands after the talk so you can try the products.
We're actually also very happy that in the beginning of this year, ECHA came with a proposal with their investigation so far. And they showed us in their proposal the massive amount of microplastic ingredients that are out there in the market. Now, with their knowledge and our knowledge combined, we came up with a list of 500 microplastic ingredients that are out there right now. In your lipsticks, in your lotions, in your shampoos, it's almost everywhere. But how me, as a common consumer, can wrap my head around such massive amount of information? And that's where Be the Microbead app is very helpful. Because what you can do with this app, that you can scan products, and it tells you if it contains microplastics or not, or some plastic ingredients that we're not sure what they are actually. Till date, we already have 200,000 downloads of the app, people love this app. We get emails all along how much they like it and they would like us to do better. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to keep making it better and improve and combining it the current knowledge that we have till we give it to the people.
We're not only helping people to reduce the plastic in cosmetics, as Madhuri was explaining, we also try to push them to analyze their day-to-day plastic use. And we want to make it as easy as possible for people to reduce their plastic footprint and also their plastic exposure, as we learned today. So one day, Madhuri and I sat down and thought, okay, what are the main areas of our life where we are using the most plastic? And we came up with 6 categories: bathroom, kitchen, while traveling, on vacation, in our own house, and in the garden.
So our goal with this diet is to activate people, not only some people, to perfectly limit their plastic use, but millions of us doing it imperfectly. As Susan from Footprint also pointed out, we need to do it together in order to create an impact. And that's why we came up with 100 or so easy tips that you can follow right now to start reducing your plastic exposure and your plastic footprint. And all we're asking people is to just start with one item at a time. But all we want people to do is to start somewhere.
We want to take you back to the good old days, about 40 to 50 years ago, and use bar soaps instead of soaps in plastic packaging, metal razors instead of plastic razors, or wooden matches instead of plastic lighters.
We wanted to bring this knowledge as close as possible to consumers, almost at the tip of their fingers. And then we realized that the solution was in front of us all along. In 2017, we launched an app to educate consumers about their plastic use and about the general problem of plastic pollution. What people could do with this app, they could pledge to reduce their plastic footprint by saying no to single-use plastics. And we gave this app a name called My Little Plastic Footprint, and we have a little trailer to show you about the app.
Children and adults from all over delight in the irresistible flavor of the biggest soup in the world, the plastic soup. Prepared only with unnatural ingredients, just like we found it in the oceans. And yes, we followed the most poisonous recipe. With the strongest shopping bags, the most colorful packaging and all kinds of disposable products, and now with even more clothes microfibers. An unwholesome treat for everyone's palates. Daily eaten by turtles, whales, birds, fish, and even shellfish. Get it now in the 40-gram size. The precise amount of plastic each person dumps into the ocean every month. Give in to the latest trend. The soup to end all soups, and indeed, to end everything and everyone. The plastic soup. Get it now on plasticsoup.info.
Glad you like it. To this day, we have 44,000 downloads of this app, and all the people who download the app, they join more than 60,000 pledges to reduce their plastic footprint. And we're actually really happy about that, because we barely did any promotion at all.
And after seeing this response, we decided that we want to give people something even better and something more accessible, in which it's very easy for them to start reducing their plastic footprint. So we thought, why don't we add this plastic diet into the app?
And that was a great idea. Thanks to our director, Maria, for that. But after we include the diet in the app, how do we measure people's progress in this plastic diet? Well, with the plastic mass index, the PMI, which is just like the body mass index, but then with plastic, obviously. And it's very simple. The closer your PMI is to 0, the less you contribute to plastic pollution, and the closer it is to 100, the more you contribute to plastic pollution.
But how do you actually reduce your PMI? It's by choosing the right alternatives and losing your plastic weight. Yes, your plastic weight. We all are overweight with the amount of the plastic we use in our daily lives. And now, Here you have a tool that will help you to deal with this very ugly problem in a very lively and colorful way. But right now, this app is still in a test version, so it's still in its beta version. But we just put it out 2 days ago, and we just see the response, and the people are loving it already. They're posting it on social media, telling their friends and family and their followers to download the app and start reducing their plastic footprint. I mean, it's very cute, so why not?
Yeah, it looks really, really nice. So, in conclusion, what we're trying to say here is that plastic soup begins in each and one of us, but we can all also be part of the solution. And that's why today, Madhuri and I presented these tangible solutions that we were talking about at the beginning. And we want you to try them, we want you to test them, and, help us make this world a little bit more plastic-free.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For you, I was a flame.
Maria, please take a seat. And then Jeroen Geurts is here, neuroscientist and president of ZonMW. Liz Bonnen, presenter at the BBC, biochemist, science and wildlife presenter. Dick Vethaak, you heard from him this morning. He's the professor of ecotoxicology at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. Cyril is also back here in the hall. Thank you very much. What did you do today? Did you leave the hall and had fun in Amsterdam? You slept. Yeah, you just flew in from New York, right? Janon Jensen, founder and executive director of HEAL. And then we have Sean. Do I pronounce it correctly now, Sean? Sean. Yeah, I was looking for a guy, and then we saw you, which is stupid because my daughter is called Dylan. So how could I make the mistake? Sean Sutherland. Who was there during the breakout session with Sean? Just to see half of them. So the other half hasn't seen you before. All of you had very powerful presentations, but in a nutshell, what is your organization doing?
We are a global social change movement with one goal, which is to ignite and inspire the world to turn off the plastic tap.
Yeah, and you are working with supermarkets here in Amsterdam.
So, yep, I mean, some of you may remember the plastic-free aisle campaign that we opened February of last year. Huge thanks to Maria for that introduction at Ecoplaza in Amsterdam. It was the world's first plastic-free aisle. So we work with industry, with governments, and largely with brands and businesses so that we can ignite change from inside.
Perfect. Would you all like a drink?
Love a drink.
What can it be?
Got a beer? We're in Amsterdam.
One beer, anybody? Who would like to have a glass of alcohol? It's almost done.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so more beer?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 3 waters?
Water.
Water, 3, 2 beers, 3 beers. Wine. Water. Okay, sorry, but otherwise this doesn't function. Okay, here we go. Let's start with Liz and Dick. First of all, what were the most alarming outcomes to you guys? Liz.
Sorry, we were chatting about what we were going to drink.
Shall I repeat the question?
Yes, so sorry.
You have been here, and Sean called you the queen of plastic in a good way, by the way, for England, because you are the person that has so much information on this subject already and told your audience about it.
Yeah, I had to really jump in feet first and learn all about the subject for this documentary, but ever since I just haven't been able to let it go. And I actually stalk Plastic Planet to keep myself informed and to continue the conversation. And so I basically first of all asked, can I come to this summit? And then Maria very kindly asked me to do a quick talk. But I think it's all been incredibly eye-opening and enlightening. This is all issues that we suspected, and now that the research is finally, catching up, as it does, it takes time. With painfully little funding, it has to be said. So it's something that I'm going to try and really campaign about because I think it's absurd.
Funding.
Yes, absolutely. But
is there any funding in the UK? I mean,
no, not enough. Absolutely not. I remember speaking to Stephanie Wright, another scientist, who, I think she got really good funding because as the attention was turned to human health, things have changed. But still, considering how serious this issue is, the fact that the science is still on the back foot because there isn't enough funding, for me, is one of the main issues here that I, as a communicator, will help, hopefully, to communicate so that we can get more support. But so the point is, what I'm learning today has been incredible. It's only the beginning. And as part of sort of this community, I hope I can consider myself now, I will just be shouting it from the rooftops as much as I can. But it has been shocking. And when I got my own results from my urine test, as much as I was saying to Sean, bring it on, I wanted to show everything.
Wait a minute, you have to explain. You did a test, right?
Yes, I did a talk at the influencers section here, so if you were upstairs you didn't hear, but I was one of the people who got their urine tested for phthalates and bisphenols, and I had BPA and 2 types of phthalates in my urine, and the 3 of most concern are actually on the list of substances of very high concern on the European Chemicals Agency list. And as much as I wanted those chemicals to be in my urine so I could help to propel change, it was really sobering to actually read it and know that, yes, all of this stuff that's most likely associated to the plastic chemicals we get through our diet, through the plastic packaging, is in my system. So, yeah, a lot
Dick,
of work to do. But
I think outside this hall, but I'm not sure, actually, but most people in the Netherlands, let's speak for myself, are still collecting, recycling plastic. And we think that a guy that is very famous in the Netherlands, Bowen-Saunders, with the Ocean Cleanup Project, is doing a great thing. I learned today, for example, from you, Sean, that this is not the way to go. It's not a solution at all to try to clean up the oceans, because it's a ridiculous plan. Maybe not ridiculous, but...
It's not ridiculous, but it doesn't work, end of pipe. It doesn't work. We said it already from the very start, you know, and you can start to clean up a little bit of the debris there in the ocean, and we know it's probably 2% of what's already there available, you know. He can catch only maybe a small fraction of what's there in the ocean.
But isn't that, sorry to interrupt, but then a problem then that this is the image that people get on TV and talk shows, that this is a solution?
It is no solution, no. But I think, I'm not sure what he proposed yesterday, but he will move now to the estuaries, and particularly in Indonesia and Asia, to be closer to the sources and to clean up the rivers there.
Right, but my question is, how do you get this information from this hall outside, so you can enlighten people that have absolutely no idea about what has been said inside here? Anybody?
All together. The point is to all work together, which is why, as a communicator, I sort of impose myself on organizations like yours, Plastic Soup Foundation, Plastic Planet, all of us. Social media can be a horrendous place, but it can also be a very powerful place. But as a communicator on the BBC, I am aware that the information isn't being spread far and wide enough. So it's our role to all work together to that end, I think.
Yeah, I think it's, we tend to always put the problem on the shopper. And that's where it's all gone wrong. We've allowed the Coca-Colas, the P&Gs, the big polluters of the planet to somehow take our gaze from the fact they're the people choosing it, they're the people pumping it out. So what I was saying upstairs was, this isn't a pollution problem because it's a production problem. So it's not about cleanup, it's about stopping it. And what I find it very exciting about today is that we know that responsibility, culpability, and liability will be the levers of change. And what we have all learned today is we are at the brink of these big businesses realizing they are responsible, and we know they are. And we are going to be pointing that finger at them right now. They're the ones that need to change. It's not about me putting the right thing in the right recycling bin. That's bullshit. This is about them stopping using plastic in the first place.
Okay. You wanted to add something.
For that. I want to. So I'm from the Health and Environment Alliance, which is an NGO working to promote health and environment through legislative change and awareness raising with our members across the European region. And I think while it is into industry, I definitely agree with Sean about stopping the production of plastic. We need to move towards a world without plastic, because plastic is made of chemicals that are really not, that are harming our health. We already have a lot of science. It's so great to see these studies coming out. But I think we have enough action today to be moving towards restricting production and really strengthening the laws on the chemicals that are harming our health. And the European Union is in a unique place to do this in the coming months, because they've actually promised, the Commission President, who is a medical doctor, she's promised to come out with a zero pollution objective. So we need a zero pollution objective for plastic. And we need to put the equation of health impacts in that, because I think then that will motivate people to do a lot more.
So this is the first conference in Amsterdam. Cyril, you are based in New York City, and you're originally from Germany, from Freiburg, but you're not for nothing in that city, because a lot of influential people are living there, as in London. So my question to you is, what should happen next year? Is this it? Or is there going to be a follow-up thing?
So first, hello?
Yep, here you go.
First of all, I don't believe that anybody in that movement did something wrong. I don't believe that Bowen-Saunders is wrong by trying, even if I never believed in cleaning up the high seas. But I believe that the biodiversity of this movement led to the point that we are now, where pretty much everybody knows that there is something wrong with plastic. Even if people often don't know what plastic is. And that's the interesting part. People don't know that plastic is in their clothing, is in objects they're consuming every day. It's an abstract, very abstract conversation for a lot of people. That's why everything that brings it close to them and relates it to everyday items is appreciated. And if it's pictures from the beach, if it's pictures from animals that are like found with like tarps, bottles, bags in their bellies, honestly, these are all campaign tools. And I find that a cleanup, even if you probably will never ever clean up the oceans, but a cleanup is a very meditative way of confronting yourself with that failure. It's a very good way to go out and see and do something and also kind of overcome this idea that you can't have any impact. Being out there and cleaning up, doing it on the street, doing it on a beach, is the best way to reflect. Is it the solution? No. The solution, and I agree with that, I think we all agree, is that the material itself is the problem. And it had been kept in place for too long because it's a technology that worked very well. And I would not even blame the brands, I would blame the material vendors. They just didn't want to change it. Plastic is such a good business. Why would you change a winning formula? Why would you build new machines, new supply chains if the old works so well? So what they did over the last 50 years was nothing else than campaigning, pushing the responsibility away from them towards the consumer, calling them names like litterbugs and whatever.
Do you agree that it's comparable to what the tobacco industry did?
100%.
Yeah.
It's what people do. You have a bad technology, you defend it with PR.
Maria, you say it's even worse.
It's even worse. They already knew BPA was bad for our health in the 30s of last century. They put everything in place, and they still use the same marketing techniques as they did in the 50s. So it's exactly the same. They never changed their tactics. We are addicts of plastic because it's pushed upon us. They say we need it, but we don't want it. So it's all about the public. We can change it together. We don't need it.
Yeah.
How important is the research that has been presented this morning? Because even though it is preliminary, and we don't know if the effects are extremely negative, somewhat negative, maybe not negative, it's, to me, and I think to many people, it's a scaremonger. If you hear in this research, the results, you think, okay, now something has to be done.
When we were told that the ozone layer was disappearing, we were perfectly in state of closing that hole again, and we did it very rapidly. If we know that we get sick of plastic, we can start refusing it and reducing it. And if the costs for our health are more than the profits...
He is not totally agreeing. Why not?
Well, because, you're talking about a single compound or a group of compounds here. That is, you can easily do, try to reduce that or ban it out. But the plastics, as said before, these are the sources. The single-use plastic is the one source. The textile fiber is another source. What about the car tires? What about the polymeric paints everywhere? Yeah. On ships, on waterworks, on buildings, in houses? You have to deal with that sources too. And not sure how to do that. It's not that in the picture yet. Policymakers don't even see it yet.
Yeah. At the very least, what we can tackle, as far as I could understand when we were starting to investigate this issue, is the 40% of plastic that's being made that's used as single use. It's not now that we're understanding the extent of the damage this could be causing to our health, of course it's not the only thing that we need to tackle, but we're not even tackling the single-use nonsense that nobody wants in their supermarkets. At least let's make a change with that.
Yeah, is a strategy like in the tobacco industry naming and shaming?
A very clever lady who might be sitting on this panel, said to me when I was learning, and my head was, I was trying not to allow my head to explode the more I was learning about this, that, it's going to take an individual to sue the petrochemical industry in the same way as a person sued the tobacco industry for change to happen. Perhaps, and I agree, this is where we're heading potentially, to really make change happen.
Cyril?
I believe that I think fortune nights are amazing, and to put the burden on individuals, honestly, there is a lot of power there. But what we have done in the last 7 years was actually using the brands to put pressure on the raw material industry.
You are working with the brands, right?
We are working with
Adidas,
brands. We have like 1,200 brands that want to work with us. We have 3 that work with us. And we said, we're going to only work with you if you commit to a long-term strategy. If you're phasing out, you're avoiding plastic, you're cutting it down, you're switching from virgin down to recycling, knowing that this is not a solution, and you're investing heavily into new materials.
To be a devil's advocate, are they using you as a fig leaf, or are they really doing something?
I make them look good if they're doing good things. I make them look very bad if they're making bad things. And everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to get up in the morning and say, oh, I'm doing better today. Truth is, though, that the results speak for themselves, because the moment Adidas declared that by 2024 they're going out of virgin plastic, there was a big wave in the whole industry. And the next move is to say, okay, we're going out of plastic. But the truth is that recycling business will not ever work. It will not ever be lucrative. The moment we're switching to recycling, we're ending plastic. Because recycling is not an alternative. People will not be interested to run that. They're not even prepared. No big investments were made. I believe that the recycling debate is a catalyst debate. We are moving actually to new materials. That's what's happening.
Jeroen, you are the guy who subsidized this research. 1.5 million for 15 projects a year long, which is naturally, I don't know, you're a scientist, a year is like nothing?
A year is very short, but I've been looking at some of the progress that's been made half a year, so halfway, and it's very good.
Progress is an ironic word in this context, right? Because the progress that is made is that we now see that most probably all the negative effects that many of you already know about are scientifically being maybe proven.
Well, what I saw... To be very blunt, what I saw this afternoon is that some things are scary, some things are reassuring. So it can also be the case.
I haven't heard that last category.
Yeah, well...
Not today, at least.
No, I can imagine, but I think in a year's time, when everything is finished, because we will have the results, the definitive results in a year, I think you'll be reassured at some points, and you will be scared and worried about some other points.
So you are a scientist.
I am, yeah.
It's not black, not white, but in any case, I understood before we went on stage, you told me I have some news.
I do have some news. I have a little announcement to make. You know, when I look at this, I think this is a tremendously important problem that we need to tackle before it gets too bad and it's too late. And the health effects are very likely. Again, results are going to come in over the coming year, but the results are very likely going to be worrying at several points. What I think we should do is invest now. Have a lot of awareness about the problem and also invest money for research, because this 1.5 million is simply not enough. What I'm prepared to do, we had a crash session this week prior to the conference with the board. What I'm prepared to do is add another 1 million to that pot, in the hopes that there is a number of people here at the table and also in the audience that will say, okay, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back home. We're going to do a crash course with the board, and we're going to add some money to the pot.
That's good news. 1 million extra for research.
Good.
Just wondering. I mean, some of you left, but are there any people who say yes, I commit some money as well? Am I too optimistic?
Too optimistic.
Yeah?
Two glasses.
Two glasses, sure. You need millions. Maria, how much do you need for this research?
How much do we need, Rick? You can better predict.
What we need? Obviously much more money, I can tell you that. This is research that will go on for 5, 10, 15, 20 years maybe even. It's not something you solve in 1 year. We on in vitro level now, on the hazard identification characterization level, we need to end up with epidemiological studies, which take already by definition years. So there's a long way to go.
Do you think that the industry or governments will believe if the research is bad? I mean, if it shows that we are getting really sick or that it's really bad for a pregnant woman, will there be organizations like we see with climate change who will say, or leaders of countries, fake news, come on, this is all a couple of people that are having NGOs or strange organizations and they're just blurting this into the world? I mean, is it difficult for you as a scientist to get this out there if there is a negative message?
No, it's not. That's why we have this beautiful combination here with the NGOs, the scientists. And this is the strength of what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
We're already doing that.
So how this typically goes is that in the startup phase, we see a problem. We think this is potentially very bad for our health, and then in the startup phase, you need money that you can't really get very easily. So you need to scrape every single reserve that you have, and then when you start seeing the results of the research, then people get really interested. So in the coming years, we need to come up with a plan based on research, and then come up with more funds.
And that's when we also need the lawyers.
Yeah.
Because once we have the hint that there is real impact on human health, that's when the lawyers kick in. And all we need is for big business, for the fossil fuel industry to realize that the bell is chiming for them. That's going to make the difference. It is all going to be about policy, legislation, and liability.
Yeah. Yes, I'll just lead on the policy, because I think while I very much appreciate research, one of the points I've been making today is that we know that the plastics are made of toxic chemicals. I talked about an example of brominated flame retardants. We tested toys. We found some of the toys had brominated flame retardants from electronic waste. So recycling is not just the issue. And what scares me the most is to say, okay, we're going to research more, when we know so much about some of the chemicals, as bisphenol A. And we've banned bisphenol A in baby bottles, but it's still being allowed in food packaging in Europe today.
Are you saying that?
And we have so many studies which say there are all these health impacts. So I feel like, okay, if we're going to wait 10, 20 years, and the plastics industry says we're going to, I don't know what you were saying, triple the production, quadruple the production, I think we are really going to be in a very bad place. And we need to connect that also with our addiction to carbon pollution and climate change. Because, we're saying, we're going to reduce our carbon emissions, and yet we're not going to burn fossil fuels, but we're extracting them to make plastics. And that is a link that we've talked about a bit today, but and I think the public needs to understand that.
Okay, you say, we need more research, but the facts are already out there. That's what you are saying. I listened today very carefully to all of you, and what was interesting to me is that the first speakers, so the scientists, they are very nuanced. And then came the UK and the US speakers, and it's action now. Come on, we know already where we are. Let's do something about this, and let's go into this fight. I think you're the same. You want to go?
What I think is you need science to... it starts with a snowflake, and then it becomes an avalanche. This is the first time that scientists say we have something to worry about. And that's a message. If you send that out, and you combine that with what Shannon says, and what Sean says, and what Jeroen says, and what Liz says, and what Cyril says, and especially what Dick is going to say, I think, then you have a story. And it's all about storytelling, and that's what we do today.
Yeah, Dick, Maria is a former television producer, so she puts you on the spot now.
I see.
What would you like to say, Dick?
Well, all the scientists that are working or involved in the program Microplastic and Health of Zon&W, we have formulated a statement, and I would like to read that statement to all of you. It's a long one. In fact, I think Jeroen just formulated it in only 2 sentences. The same thing, but I have to read the thing anyway. So
I'm known for simplifying things.
There you go. Okay. So it reads as follows: the abundance of micro and nanoplastics in the living environment requires a better understanding of human exposure to plastic particles, their uptake, fate, and their health effects. This knowledge is essential to reduce potential adverse health effects and guide the design of effective measures to prevent further pollution of both the environment and our bodies. As presented today, the research community still has many unsolved questions. We need to continue these nascent studies with follow-up research in 2020. That's why I'm very happy with $1 million already, The 51-year projects are making a promising start, but are certainly not long enough to provide the body of data needed to answer the most pressing questions about health risks of plastic particles. Further funding is much needed And we welcome your support in increasing research funding for microplastic health and research. And I'm still... Thank you. They're making a good start, making a very good start.
How many scientists agreed on this statement?
Well, I think if you count all the scientists involved in this program now, you deal with almost 35 different expert groups with an international component as well. It's not only Dutch scientists. So I guess altogether you're talking about 60, 17 scientists, 60 to 70.
What's the signal here, Maria? How important is this?
Well, it's a lot of talk. I saw him having some trouble with it. The only thing that matters is that today we did do something to turn the tide. We everybody here, everybody who's attending, everybody who was speaking, this is something I worked for the last 4 years with my team. And I'm very proud of this team because they made this all happen. I think this is the turning point. We will continue from here on, and I can tell you there will be 2 more plastic health summits. Probably with Cyril in the United Nations in New York, but I leave it up to him to tell something about that.
Could you tell us, Cyril, what is the plan here? Because that would be a super international focus, naturally, to have it at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Yeah, I've been forced on the table here. I would say, first of all, the problem of plastic is established. Everybody knows about it. I mean, I'm just coming from a 10-day negotiation with governments at the UN. It was Climate Week, and plastic had a big, big place there. And we announced the first countries that are actually banning plastic, Maldives and Antigua Barbuda. And we're going now to all 58 small island development states, and we're already negotiating with big countries. And they're phasing out plastic like overnight. It's like, boom. You know, they're saying, gone. And pushing the problem towards the industry. And I think the big debate here, for me, is not anymore, is plastic bad? We all know that. And everybody knows it. And there is a public opinion that forces people to act because plastic is so visual. It's so easy to point a finger at. But I think the true question is, how do we solve it really? Recycling will not be the answer. Plastic is not ready for a circular economy because plastic is not a problem end of life. Plastic is all the time a problem. When you're using it right now, you're doing everything right as a consumer, it's still a problem. So the question is, what's the out? How do we get out of this problem? And it's new technology. The person that comes with a new material, a group that comes with new material to replace single-use plastic bottles tomorrow, they will make billions. It's a technology race. And therefore, and it started currently, it's not something that is around for 2 years.
Are there any positive signs? Is there something on the horizon?
Oh yeah, and I would compare right now. We are encouraging investors in a big scale with the support of big banks to divest from classic portfolios and go into new materials. And there will be a rush now that you can compare with the digital revolution. It will be exactly the same what happened with the internet, with phones, will happen with materials. And plastic is the beginning, because we can't afford any other toxic substances any longer anyway. And plastic is a beautiful visual, and it's easy to fight, but there are other threats that need to be ended right away.
Liz?
Yeah, I also just raise the issue of sustainability, degrowth, a different economic model that I'm sort of being privy to in different panels and discussions that I'm having back in the UK and from people internationally. It's a sheer numbers game, right? There's 7.4 billion of us. That's going to reach 9 billion very soon. And whatever the solutions are going to take their toll on a closed system. David Attenborough, my hero, I'm sure he's probably most of your heroes too. One of my favorite quotes of his is, anybody who thinks you can have infinite growth on a closed planetary system with finite resources is either crazy or an economist. Now, the good thing about, it's brilliant, but the biggest ray of hope I've had through all of this, and it applies, I think, to other environmental issues, is economists are beginning to talk about this in a way that's refreshing. Kate Raworth is one of them. And she may not have it all right, but it's exciting in the sense of the 20th century model. How much financial value can I take out of this resource before throwing it away? It's outdated, it's linear, it's degenerative. and it may apply for alternative materials to solve the plastic crisis. Instead, she's saying that leader economists are talking about a 21st century model that says, when I make this product, how much can it benefit society, but also the natural world of which we are a part? How much can it give back? So when I'm in the plastic or alternative material industry, and I've got a couple of waste products, what other industry can take that? And she talks about an ecosystem of resource use. I do believe that we need to have a paradigm shift in our relationship with the planet, what we produce, how we produce it, and we need to rewrite this economic model that is absolutely outdated. Growth, infinite growth, every company has to grow, the bottom line, the profit line, all of that needs to be looked at. I'm not an economist, I'm a scientist, but I think that has to be part of the discussion if we're really going to solve this environmental crisis and all our environmental crises.
Very good. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, one short question in between. You did the test this week.
Yes.
At the VU, and I understood a colleague of yours is here from.
Yes, Lucy Siegel.
Lucy Siegel, journalist, director. Now she's doing a show on the 24th of October for ITN.
She's been interviewing many of the scientists.
Yeah, I don't know. Is she still here, or did she?
Is she here?
Oh, filming
You're
outside.
here. She's here. There she is.
Are you still here?
Yeah, she's in the audience.
Oh, hello, Lucy.
And you still don't know your results, do you?
Yeah, there is a microphone here. Lucy, can you stand, please? And so you get a hand mic.
Lucy, do you know your results now?
Yeah. I'm not allowed to talk about my results.
No, because of the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm keeping a neutral face.
No,
but
fair enough.
The question was, do you already know?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all she can say. The point is, we had a brief discussion outside about, what it means for both of us. I mean, Lucy is an absolute champion for this cause and all environmental causes in Britain, and, she's known internationally too. And we had a moment in the reception sort of going, how does someone like you and I process this and then take it further to communicators? It's a strange situation to be in, to jump in feet first and go, test me, I'm going to be a communicator with this, but I'm also a human being. I'm also coming to terms with the reality of, I know my results, what's in my system.
Lucy, you can't, and I totally understand, you can't reveal the results, but isn't it scary to admit yourself to a tester?
I think for me, it's like, when Liz and I were talking before, it's so personal, and I think what I've done is depersonalize environmental impact, like my whole career. I'm always going, look at that over there, that's terrible. And when you have to talk about yourself, it's quite difficult.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
I don't know, we haven't met. I heard you are here, that you're doing this show, but are you a mom? Do you have kids?
No, I don't have any children.
So, I mean, these results, could they have an impact on future planning?
Well, I'm of an age when probably not. So
okay.
I'm child-free or childless, depending on how you feel about these things.
It's not just about reproduction. It's not just about fetal abnormalities. This is about hormone-mediated cancers. This is about reproductive issues that can cause problems like endometriosis, whether you're going to have children or not. Breast cancer.
Cancer.
So I, like Lucy, don't have children either, and I've chosen not to have children. But when it becomes personal, I'm exactly the same as you, and we need to talk more. We're sort of like ships that pass in the night, and we do virtually the same jobs. But it is very true what Lucy says. This is the first time I go, look at that, this affects us all. Look at this affects us all. This is our future. But this is the first time I've actually taken stock of something that is physically, physiologically, and at a biochemical level affecting my DNA, my health. And it's hard to put into words, and I'm sure when you go through your experience that you'll feel the same. It's a very odd position to be in.
Is it fair to say that a television program like this or the tests of today could be a shocker for a broad audience?
It needs to be. I already posted mine the minute I came off stage.
Yep.
Well, I just wanted to talk about that because in France, where I'm living at the moment, they do a lot of human biomonitoring, so really looking at the contamination. And this is the French Health Ministry and Institute. And they published something maybe a month ago on endocrine disrupting chemicals, where they basically found it in children and moms. And it's a huge, I would say, like you say, awakening. Like, okay, this is, what is this doing to my health? And it also increases people's interest in looking at what are the solutions and what can we do. I know I am a mom. One of the reasons I set up Heal 15 years ago is I did testing of my hair on methylmercury, because before I was pregnant, and we did a whole campaign to try and get the EU to have a mercury ban, which is actually happening now, because and that is when you know your own results and you realize that the science is very solid on methylmercury. That's just one substance where we have a global treaty, and we're talking about plastics, and we've heard there's so many more chemicals. So I do think it's happening across Europe, whether it's these individual tests we're doing here, but the EU is actually doing human biomonitoring of phthalates, and you said other bisphenol A. So
Sean first, and then Jeroen.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, because we often refer to plastic as the smoking of our generation, but the massive difference is you choose to put that cigarette in your mouth. Passive smoking aside, you choose to put that cigarette in, and you choose to smoke, even when you know that it's bad for your health. And the thing with plastic is it is omnipresent. It is everywhere. It's in that beer. It's in the air I'm breathing in. We have no choice. And that's the big shocker that you wake up to, is that you now know your results. You know the levels of toxicity in your blood. There ain't nothing you can do about it. And that's why we all have to come together and do what we're doing today, because this will be the lever of change. Human health, and the fact we have no choice. And we need to be, the public, we need to be just a little bit more angry, a little bit more anxious. I'm not talking about fear, I'm talking about demanding change. How much more do we need to know? This is incredible that this is happening. And of course we need the proof. But really, we already know enough. You know now.
I'd like to respond to that. I'm very impressed by the energy and the collaboration that I see here today. This really is the set-off, I should say, of a movement that is very necessary. Still, I would like to encourage you guys, when you say that, to not look at science as a slow machine that really, it's nice if we know things, but, we already know enough. Look at science as your advocate. I mean, if you research well, you gain so much credibility, you gain so much momentum, and don't underestimate a statement like this, because there's so many people who are working together, and that's really, really, really something.
Absolutely don't.
Yeah.
So
it's everything. It's everything.
And actually,
let's work together.
Science can help us have the evidence which we can actually calculate the health impact, which it does a lot. We work a lot with EU research, so
it gives you direction, right? It's absolutely.
It's the proof.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
All right.
We have different conversations going on now. In any case, Dick, thank you very much for your statement, but it needs to be redacted a little bit, I think, so to get it out and everybody can understand what you just said.
Yeah, and I want to make one more point here, because you already mentioned that. I think it's even essential that we take other groups aboard here. It's such a complicated issue here to unravel, and we want to have the evidence on the table as soon as possible. So I'm happy.
Somebody said in the breakout session, Unilever is absolutely aware of the fact that they are producing massive amount of poisonous stuff, and they want to work on it. The new CEO has said so. Do you have any major global companies on board now? Maria, is there any contact with, Coca-Cola, Pepsi?
We are talking with the fashion industry, and then on the highest level. I cannot tell too much about that. Again, it's Cyril and Plastic Soup Foundation, Parley, who are working on that.
So I would say,
Cyril?
okay.
Yep.
I would say that every company we're talking to, and there are lots of them, they are members of Parley without us being able to announce them. They're all concerned. They're panicking, actually. And they're panicking because they know that legislation will come. And even if, and that's the great part, and we have to keep that climate up, we have to, and I agree with you, we have to demand and nag on all levels, on a private level, on a very individual level, but also on a professional level, where we always tend to say, oh, there is no option. You know what? That doesn't matter. You ask anyway. Yeah. You go to your vendor and you ask them every day, and you will not believe what impact you're making. But what I know is that the brands, they want to move. this is not anymore a problem that we have to convince the brands of. Now it's about the big chemical industry.
Yeah.
It's about the materials. And that is the interesting part, because if they don't watch out, they're sitting on all technology very soon. And that is the big game that is happening right now.
But that's the same argument that Shell has. I mean, if they know, and they did the research, and they knew...
They know that they're going out of fossil fuel.
But they will kill their busis if they start pumping
the
oil
thing
and
is,
gas.
there's a parallel world that you have to see when it comes to like such drastic innovation, that these companies have to keep the status quo officially as long as they can, so they're selling, and they have to create a parallel world where they're actually saying, oh, okay, we're testing, until we have proof that we can swap. And this will never be a clean on-off switch. It will be always a very long process. But what our idea was to say, why wouldn't we pick a set of countries that we declare test markets? Why wouldn't we call these countries future nations or future island nations? We change laws with these presidents there, with these ministers, and we just declare whole countries a test market and say, okay, here in the Maldives, we're phasing out plastic. What is the new material? We're doing that in lots of countries.
With all due respect for the Maldives, and I understand where they're coming from, because they are very vulnerable for
No, but it's
climate
every
change.
country in an island.
But are you talking to, is there any possibility of getting, like the Netherlands
India,
or the UK
Indonesia.
or India? That would be
India
something.
is announcing, I think they announced already a ban on single-use plastic items in a very big scale. Okay, I said something I shouldn't say.
No, they retrieved yesterday.
Okay,
Oh.
see, back and forth. But
President Modi forbid plastic, and now he...
And now they retrieved. They don't do it anymore. They said it's impossible. Industry is too important.
And people in the street are getting very angry. I mean, the people
I don't know
who
what's
use plastic.
happening now. It's just news from yesterday.
Okay.
It's big moves.
Well, the EU already has a ban on single-use plastics that they adopted last year, and we heard today in our session upstairs from the European Chemical Agency that they're putting through a restriction on microplastics. So in the European Union is 27, 28 countries, and that's a huge market.
Well, one of the commissioners, the Dutch guy, Frans Timmermans,
No, I know, I
is
said
busy
15,
with
but
this.
it's a first step.
I would not underestimate size. I think at this point, it's not important to get the United States to do a first big move. It will not happen. You need the small countries. You need to go and say, rather, I have extreme example that it works than compromises in big countries. Because we need to prove that it works. And the moment something works, it can be scaled. That's how business works.
Is that one of the reasons, Maria, has been a very interesting day? The group of people I was missing are politicians.
No, there are clerks in the venue.
They're hiding.
They are hiding. I don't know. No, that was
They're
a
in the
joke.
closet. Okay.
That was a joke. No,
but
they are here.
Do you agree that the only way to go is get companies on board and get politicians, political leaders on board?
No, when I learned, when I was traveling the world in 2009, and I visited Captain Charles Moore, who gave this problem the name the plastic soup. I was with him, and he said, Maria, just go back to Holland, start a foundation, and make a difference from there. Because in the north of Europe, it's safe, you have money enough, there is not real poorness, you are so long without war. There is where it starts. The Clinton Foundation is in Holland, Bill Gates is in Holland, everybody is looking for a position here. And he said, do it in the north of Europe. Start working there. Tell the message to the world and spread the word. And I agree with him, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I agree with him that the little islands in the world are so polluted. If you see what kind of waste is over there, and they don't have incinerators, they have nothing. So the little islands in the world should be examples for all of us. We need at least help them and take our responsibility.
And don't forget that because people who travel to these countries are the leaders of the world.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if actually a problem occurs at the end of the world in paradise, if there's no hiding ground anymore anywhere on this planet,
they cannot go nowhere.
Why is it worth living on this planet anymore? Because I think that's the problem. The nature is now infiltrated with our wrongdoing, with our design failures. There's no hiding place. You can go to the Himalaya and you're eating plastic snow. Mm-hmm. And that is the scary aspect of that. And that's why the visuals are so strong. It's in our air, it's in our water, it's everywhere. And this should bring us all to the street every day. And better than the street is to actually decision makers and give them options. Because right now, it's not anymore about convincing people that plastic is bad. It's about how do we get out of this crisis.
Very good. We promised short and sweet and drinks. Jeroen, you have a last word.
I was just thinking that a government is already on board. So the first program has been funded by the government, by all sorts of partners. Fonds. But we need more collaboration. We need companies, we need government, we need Zonneweg, we need all sorts of parties that unite. So I would like to know, how can we achieve that? I think your actions are really important to bring us together, to unite us, to have people invest for a longer period of time in research, and then get the microplastics out of the world. I mean, it's just it's an innovation. Right?
Both test the past
and the additive.
Test the killers, test the past, but also test the future. Because we don't want to suddenly introduce new materials that do in 10 years exactly the same what we're doing now with plastic, because plastic was a great idea in the first place.
Okay. Maria, last question to you. We are here sitting in this nice theater in Amsterdam West in the Houthavens. Next year, where will you be with your tribe?
Well, there is an invitation to go with the second summit to Lisboa. The other invitation, or at least when we're thinking about it, is bringing it to New York. At least 2 more plastic health summits. What's happening already is that scientists working on microplastics in the whole world are approaching us, and as Dick knows, I immediately give them to Dick so he can look who can work with whom. I'm no scientist. I don't know.
A tired activist.
I'm very tired. I can tell
okay,
you
so
that.
you want to open the bar then here? Famous last
drinks
words?
are on the house.
I think one last
thing.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, all of you, for this panel. Thank you. Good job. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.